lies started in February of 2020, but thankfully, the cracks in Elizabeth's lies started to show. Around Christmas time in 2019, one of Jennifer's children was cast in the Nutcracker, and this was a really big deal. So she threw this big party. But during the party, Elizabeth said she was experiencing terrible pain, and so the two of them went to the hospital. But while they were there, Jennifer thought it was very strange that Elizabeth never once mentioned to a doctor or nurse that she had cancer or that she only had one kidney. So Jennifer herself actually jumped in and started
Yeah,
telling
I'm here.
doctors about her medical history. And doctors looked at her and said, her kidneys are completely fine. Now, at this point, she somewhat brushed it off, but it was all in the back of her mind. And then in 2020, we all know what happened. COVID hit, and everyone in Elizabeth's life was worried about her health. But for some reason, Elizabeth didn't seem as worried as the others, which made no sense considering she was allegedly still living with a very serious cancer, and getting COVID could kill her. And that's when Jennifer decided to go down the rabbit hole of her wife's Twitter, and the lies
Uh-oh.
revealed themselves. It started with October 27th, 2018, the day of the massacre in Pittsburgh. Even though Elizabeth claimed to be deeply impacted by this event and claimed to have cleaned up her friend's remains, her Twitter tells a different story. That day, and the days after, Elizabeth had been out with friends, not even remotely close to Pittsburgh. She continued scrolling and found pictures that Elizabeth had posted while she was going through chemotherapy. And then she noticed something. Her head appeared to be bald, yet she still had eyebrows and eyelashes. Jennifer may be a nurse, but I think it's pretty common knowledge that when you're going through chemo, you lose all of your hair, including your eyebrows and eyelashes, not just the hair on your head. Then she saw
Yep.
pictures on Twitter where Elizabeth was wearing a bandage to cover a scar from her chemotherapy port. But Jennifer knew her wife's body and knew that there was no scar that needed to be covered. I mean, why have a bandage to cover a scar that doesn't exist? And at
Oh,
that
tell
point,
me her
she
wife
knew
was
she
the
had to
one
go
that.
to Elizabeth with her concerns. Jennifer decided to approach the topic casually, hoping that a more gentle approach would get her more answers. So she decided to ask Elizabeth what medications she was taking. And at first, Elizabeth tried to tell her that telling her that would be too triggering, which doesn't really make sense because she is her wife. But eventually she decided to tell her. And this is where Elizabeth really messed up. She started telling Jennifer her medications, and one of the medications really stood out to Jennifer because she knew that no doctor would ever prescribe it to her because it's known to cause kidney failure, and she only had one kidney. To be clear, Elizabeth did have two kidneys, but that is the story that she is telling. And at this point, it was all too much for Jennifer to ignore, so she decides to ask Elizabeth straight up, what is going on? And that's when Elizabeth started to tell her. I say started because she didn't tell Jennifer the full truth all at once, of course. Instead, she told Jennifer that she did have cancer at one time in her life, but she recovered after going through chemo. She said that she loved the attention that she got from being sick and that the lies just started to spiral. Then Jennifer confronted Elizabeth about her brother's suicide. She said that she knew that that wasn't true and that she also knew he wasn't this dangerous person living in the Philippines, as she said, and she knew that she was trying to pawn her story off as her own. Now, Jennifer wasn't going to just confront Elizabeth with all this and then just drop it. She wanted her to tell the truth to all of her family, coworkers, and friends. So Elizabeth told their close friends, who, keep in mind, were friends with Jennifer first, and they didn't seem that bothered by her lies. They still viewed Elizabeth as this hero for how she helped Jennifer during such a difficult
All
time in
right,
her life.
let's
And
see it.
understandably, this made Jennifer feel crazy. She thought it was time to talk to her therapist and sort out how she was feeling about everything and whatnot, which is a total normal response. But then she found out that Elizabeth started seeing the same therapist as her, and she felt like she took her therapist. And that made Jennifer worry even more because the thing is, Jennifer's therapist was the person who reported to the Department of Child and Family Services about her well-being. When her husband took his life, Jennifer had to start going to therapy because she got custody of the kids and the state needed to make sure that she was mentally okay to have custody of the kids. So when she found out Elizabeth, a known liar, was seeing the same therapist as her, She was concerned that maybe Elizabeth was telling her things that could keep her from having custody of her kids. Now, I don't know if
Oh.
she did end up lying or anything like that, but Elizabeth should have seen another therapist, point blank, period. It is so weird that she went to the same therapist. I also bring this up because there's an episode of Grey's Anatomy where Joe went to see a therapist who happened to have the same name as Jennifer's therapist, where she, Joe, talked about her abusive ex-husband who has since died. Literally Jennifer's exact story. Now, for the next few weeks, Jennifer really struggled and even contemplated taking her own life. But she quickly realized that she couldn't give up, so she went back into mental health treatment with the intention of getting stronger for the sake of her kids. She and Elizabeth did a week-long intensive marriage therapy and came to the conclusion that if they wanted things to work out between them, Elizabeth needed to come clean fully. And even though Elizabeth agreed to do this, she dragged her feet for months. She slowly started to tell people one by one about her lies, but of course, she managed to not tell anyone at work. This obviously upset Jennifer because Elizabeth wasn't living up to her end of the deal. And then Elizabeth ends up filing for divorce. Now, this is just my guess, but I'm thinking that she probably would rather have gone through a divorce than to have to tell her coworkers that she had been lying about everything all this time. So in February of 2022, Jennifer was so pissed about everything she had found out about that she ends up sending a large chain email telling people who Elizabeth worked with that they needed to stop believing her stories and how she's taking the stories of survivors. And included in the people who received this message was Krista Vernoff, the showrunner for Grey's Anatomy. And not long after this, it looked like people finally started catching on to the truth. Elizabeth's coworkers started to dig into her lies and realized that nothing she said was true. And Disney, an affiliate of Shondaland, opened an official investigation into Elizabeth in March of 2022 and announced that she was being put on administrative leave. And during this time, Elizabeth refused to hand over medical documentation to substantiate her claims and refused to have an evaluation by a doctor supplied by the company. And following her administrative leave, Elizabeth ended up formally resigning. And because of that, the investigation into her lies was closed. And I know that sounds abrupt, but that's kind of how it was. As soon as the truth started to come out, she said, "I'm done." And that was it. The investigation ended. And keep in mind, this was an internal investigation by the company, and no legal action was ever taken against her. And there really can't be. I mean, besides taking advantage of her friends, family, and coworkers and hurting them emotionally, she didn't use any resources of any hospitals or the police. She didn't raise any money. She didn't do anything that can be held against her legally. And I know that's not a very satisfying end to this story. I mean, she did have to suffer a lot of personal consequences and humiliation, but I'm sure a lot of you wish more could be done. I do want to mention that Elizabeth has spoken out, saying that what she did was wrong. She said that the lie began in 2007 after she hurt her knee hiking, and that part of the story was true, but everything else was not. Once her knee was healed and people were moving on from helping her, she realized she wanted that attention back. So the lies started, and then they just grew and grew and grew. In a statement, she said, "I know it's absolutely wrong what I did. I lied and there's no excuse for it, but there's context for it. The best way I can explain it is when you experience a level of trauma, a lot of people adopt a maladaptive coping mechanism. Some people drink to hide or forget things. Drug addicts try and alter their reality. Some people cut. I lied. That was my coping and my way to feel safe, seen, and heard." Elizabeth has admitted to shaving her head, to using makeup to make herself appear more sick, to
Wow,
faking
that is so
bouts of
messed up.
nausea at inopportune times. Many people who supported her feel very taken advantage of, and a lot of them think that she is going to eventually try and get herself a book deal in the upcoming months or years. This whole thing just blows my mind. Like I said, it fascinates me when an adult, a grown-ass adult, will make up so many lies, so many elaborate lies, and commit fully, man. I mean, it's it's just hard to even wrap your mind around. And I am certainly curious to hear your thoughts on all of this. I know this wasn't my typical true crime episode, but it was a story I just really wanted to share because it is just mind-blowing. But that is going to be it for me this week. Be sure to check out the link in the description for ThreadUp and use the code TCKR for an extra 40% off your first order. Thanks so much to ThreadUp for sponsoring today's video. And I'll be back next week, guys. Until then, stay safe out there.
Why is it so loud?
Crime, conspiracy, serial killers, cults, and murder. All things that I love to consume, and I know you do too, you sick, beautiful, intellectual-minded freak. And today, we have a very special episode. I think my favorite episode of these deep dives so far, because we are actually going to be talking to the person that went through this heinous, unimaginable crime and getting her point of view. And this individual is Kara Robinson Chamberlain. She has an absolutely harrowing yet inspiring story about survival against unimaginable odds. At just 15 years old, Kara was abducted by a serial killer. But with her quick thinking and insane courage, she was able to escape and eventually identify her captor, which she would later find out was a serial killer. And our conversation was so informative and interesting, and I want to thank Kara again for doing this interview. She is such a wonderful, inspiring human being, and without further ado, let's get into the interview with Kara Chamberlain. Hello everyone, I am here with the beautiful Kara Chamberlain. Hello.
Hey.
How are you?
Good.
And it's Chamberlain.
Yeah.
Lane? I don't know. I never
know. Chamberlain. Chamberlain. I don't know.
Either way, one of my last names is Hollowell, but I don't know if it's Hallowell or Hellowell or I don't know. But anyway, I do all these true crime deep dives, and I always talk for the person that went through it or anything. So thank you so much for meeting with me and telling your story through your eyes, because it's indescribable. Like I've read about it a lot, and there's only so much you can get from reading about it, but it's unimaginable, and I really want my audience to hear it through your voice. So if you're okay with it, you can intro yourself and just kind of get into how it all went.
I do want to start just by saying, like, I know when people hear this story, the first thing people think is, oh my God, I could never do that. And I just encourage everyone listening to listen with the understanding that you absolutely have no idea what you are capable of and what you can and would do in a situation like mine or many others until you're put in them, because it's the human will is to survive. So in that vein, when I was 15 years old, the kind of flyover version of my story, and we can go into as much detail as you want.
Yeah.
The flyover version is when I was 15 years old, I was kidnapped by a man I later found out was a serial killer. So I was very much like average 15-year-old. This was 2002. So 22 years ago, I was spending the night with a friend, and as most 15-year-olds do, always with like my friend, my boyfriend, similar situation as most people find themselves in at that age, and had spent the night with my best friend, and we were getting ready to figure out what we were going to do for the day, decided to go to the lake, and called her mom, asked if there was anything that needed to be done at the house, and her mom said, yeah, can you guys water the plants before you leave? And so my friend wanted to take a shower before we left, and so I was like, I'll water the plants. It'll kind of get us out of the house a little bit faster. And so that was a decision that really changed my life. Yeah. And I was outside in like cheerleading shorts. Are you old enough to have worn the Sophie shorts?
Oh yeah. It was like I wore them in volleyball and stuff. Yeah, like the really like just sort of horrible shorts.
Are they still around? I don't know.
No, I don't. And where was your friend at the time during this as well?
She was in the shower.
She was in the shower.
Yeah, so she got in the shower, and so I went outside and like the cheerleading shorts and t-shirt from like my mom's work, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like a car dealership t-shirt and my cheerleading shorts and no shoes, no cell phone. Did I have a cell phone? That's one of the things that people, where was it? Why didn't you have your cell phone? I'm like, oh baby.
2002. 2002.
Yeah. So I was outside watering the plants, and 15, getting ready to get my license. So I was kind of paying attention to cars a little more than maybe I would have previously.
For sure.
So when a Trans Am drove by, I was like, that's a kind of cool car. Like maybe I would like to drive one of those, and noticed it. And, you know, if it would have been a Civic or, or, you know, a Kia Rio, I probably wouldn't have noticed it. But I noticed it, and it was on the way out of the neighborhood, and just kind of cataloged it and went about my business. And then next thing that I knew, the car came back into the neighborhood and pulled directly into the driveway. And I was not, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily naive or that I was naive, but I lived, this was before the internet was what it is today. So I think that anyone that's like my age will understand this, but maybe some people that are younger won't quite